Welcome everyone to our episode 134 of our podcast. In today's episode, I have an honor guest, Jason Johnson, and we are going to talk about a very important topic that in today's navigation of the companies, we really need to understand that leadership is not about hierarchy, is not about a position, but it's about leading with the heart to engage. That's the title of our episode. And Jason is an innovative leader known for challenging the status quo and thinking outside the box with a unique ability to assess ideas and uncover their potential. His curiosity and strategic mindset distinguish him as a visionary. He fosters psychologically safe environments as people first leader, providing nuanced feedback that promotes growth. Jason's holistic business approach has delivered exceptional results for customers, teams, and organizations, earning him awards and national recognition for over 25 years. His solutions are practical and effective. Thank you, Jason, for being here.
Oh, thank you for the very warm welcome, David. I love that you used the word innovate when you first opened up. You know, when we look at business, we're constantly innovating. The evolution of all of work, right? Like that's how we stay relevant. That's how we stay present. That's how we, learn to grow into the future. And often when we think of innovation, it's really around systems and items and processes. Well, the innovation with leadership is innovation with people, and that is about the evolution of people and the evolution of leadership and how it's constantly changing. There's some things that have worked really well over the existence of time in leadership for the right situation, and I think that the future of leadership is with heart, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
I completely agree. And I think that, yes, many businesses that don't innovate, they tend to just crash and burn, let's say, because they just, I think what happens to many of the businesses is that they trust too much in the success that they have at the beginning, and they completely forget about the opinion of their own group of people that is doing the work, and also the clients, what the clients are now demanding from them. No, so they completely forget the line of direction that they should have, and they forget that without people buying their product, or without people consuming whatever they are offering, they have nothing. And without the people that is doing that work, also they have nothing. So those things, I think, they completely pass the radar of many leaders. So my first question is, well, would be, how did you arrive to this leadership business? What is your story?
Yeah, it's interesting, David. I never asked to be a leader. I never wanted to be a leader. Um, Early on in my journey, I've been in corporate America with two large global food service companies for the past 25 years. And when I first started my journey, I was an individual contributor. I was working on, I was just serving customers, and I was responsible for sales. But the interesting thing is that I never once thought about sales. I always engaged the customer to help solve their problem, to remove frustration, to remove pain. And when you can do that, then it becomes a positive thing. And knowing that I wasn't approaching the customer for a transactional situation, I wasn't trying to sell them one thing. I wanted to create such a positive experience that they wanted me to come back the next day, and the next day after that, and the next day after that, right? That's engagement. It's right when we talk about that. And when I started to focus my energy and thoughts on being engaged with the customer around their frustrations, around their problems, my sales increased, and
Mm.
it got a lot of attention from my leadership and the people that I worked for, and so they started promoting me. And as I came into a leadership role and responsible for people, I use that same concept that I use with my customers, I use with my employees. And,
Mm.
just again, not focusing on the tasks that the employees have to do, but focusing on removing their frustrations and their problems, which naturally allowed them to thrive in the tasks that they had to do. And so it happened organically. It wasn't something that I strategically thought about. And I was promoted many times and relocated several times. I ended up leading 4 different teams in 4 different states in the U.S., Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and then in Texas. And I was having success from a corporate metric standpoint and
Mm.
from a financial standpoint. And so I started to look at patterns of behaviors throughout these different cities and what was the common denominator. And it was the way I engaged the hearts and the minds of my customers and my employees that led to that success.
Mm. Yeah, that sounds about the the meaning of what it should be to scale into a leadership position. To first understand your people, your, let's say, your subordinates or your employees, as you want to call them,
Mhm.
and engage with them as human beings, not as numbers, because that's what I think has been lost in many companies, and they just see people as numbers. They just see people as productivity measures, and they forget about who they are, and they try to implement these team building strategies that are completely I don't know, they are dumb, let's say, for not finding another word.
Yeah,
And they want to connect people once they are already disconnected and completely separated. That's what I have seen in throughout my navigation of different companies and different positions that I have had. I have always been observing these patterns, as you mentioned, these patterns of behaviors, and mostly of these leadership positions, that they just don't think the the way they are approaching the employee. They don't even have that nuance, as you mentioned, of engaging with them. So
yeah.
my next question would be, how did these leaders detect that you were doing a good job in terms of discovering the engagement, or they didn't even notice about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the companies that I've worked for, they do these employee engagement surveys,
Mm.
right? So they send out these surveys either annually or biannually and ask employees. And it's interesting because my role has changed over the last few years. But a few years ago, when I was leading a team in Dallas, Texas, um, our CEO actually came out. He's our CEO today, but he was our chief operating officer at the time, and he came out to Dallas to visit. And during his visit, he asked me, he stated to me that, Jason, your employee engagement scores are the highest in the nation. He said, I've never seen engagement scores this high. And what do you attribute it to? Because, by the way, my financial results were also in the top tier, in the top percentile. And so there's a correlation there. And I said, heart centered leadership. And I don't know that he knew how to take that conversation. So we didn't talk much about it, but he felt he felt it was interesting. And then we kind of just moved on to another subject. But I'll tell
Mm,
you, um, when companies look at their people initiatives, their people strategy, a lot of HR or human resource departments will tell you that employee engagement is their number one priority.
mm,
Because when employees are engaged, all the other things start to happen. And it's interesting that our leaders, I mean, look, let's be the reality is that a business is designed to generate money, right?
mm,
That's what business is. And but the reality is that our corporate leaders who are focused on generating money, they look at engagement as a separate initiative. And it's not a separate initiative. It is the way to generate money, right? So when we look at customers, we have customer retention and customer sales. You can retain a customer that doesn't spend any money with you, and the way they engage with you is by spending money. And you can retain employees that aren't engaged with you, but the way that they engage with you is that energy that's an exchange, right? They're interested, they're involved, and it's up to the leadership to create the engagement, and so that employees feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. I mean,
mm,
but by definition, the term engage um, is to attract or involve, to establish a meaningful connection. Even when you look at mechanics and you look at gears, when gears engage, they move each other. They put things in motion, right? That's engagement. And so when we think about that on a human level of what moves somebody, that or what is meaningful to somebody, that comes from the heart.
mhm.
That comes from connecting with them as a human being first. And I've seen that over and over many, many times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you or did you try or did you implement? I think the answer is going to be yes, but I want to know how did you do it? How can you implement this kind of a strategy in small cells? Because the first thing that probably a leader can tell you is if you go to a company and you offer this kind of leadership, they can tell you, I cannot stop the things so that you can implement what you want. So he's gonna love what you say. He's gonna agree with many things, but he's gonna say, "This is not
Yeah.
possible for my company because I don't have time. I need to keep doing the things that I know how to do." So how do you uh, arrive to an agreement or propose something to him so that they can implement in a small way this kind of leadership?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's the $1 million question. And you're right. It is a monumental task. It's like I always refer to it as it's like trying to change tires on a moving car,
Yeah,
right? It's
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 more
tough.
difficult than the pits, no?
Absolutely. It's a very I like to say that it's a simple solution, but simple doesn't mean easy. It
Hmm.
takes a lot, right? And so I think there's some things to look at, David. First of all, these decision makers, CEOs or just presidents or whoever is making the decision, it's really important to understand that they're people too, right? They're human beings. And if I was going to engage a client or an employee, it's the same sort of engagement with the CEO. What's important to them? What do they want to achieve? And it's really understanding that and connecting with their heart. What are their pain points, and helping remove some of that. And a lot of it is reframing thought process. right? Just looking at something a little differently. Um, I love that you said, how do you do this on a cellular level, right? Like, the human body is so similar to society, right? We engage with each other um, to become some bigger than ourselves, right? Like creation. And there's so many parallels to the universe, to the world, to ourselves as humans and our internal structure, and to functioning teams and an organization, right? A living thing. And but yeah, I think the first step, David, is really engaging that decision maker as a human and not trying to sell them on an idea, but use those tools and techniques with them to help solve their own problems. And then it'll start to resonate with them, and they'll go, aha. And then you have to be intentional. You can't make people do stuff. um, you you can only influence them. And so what I've learned in life is that if you want something in your life, practice it. I'll tell you, I had a leader that I worked for who used to come into my office, and he was a micromanager. He would just come in and he would say the things he needs me to do, and he would leave. And he would do that to other leaders, and everybody was frustrated. And we can't change that leader. But what I started doing is I would get up from my desk and I would follow him back to his office, and I would tell him that I need more information. And then we would have some dialogue around it. I wanted him to talk to me and not talk. I wanted him to talk with me and not at me. And what I noticed is that I kept practicing the thing that I wanted from him. I kept practicing it with myself to him. And eventually, his style started to change when he would come into my office, and he would give me more information. I didn't make him do that, but I practiced it with him, and it influenced him at some point, and he knew that's what I needed. And so he adjusted his style so that he could get what he wanted by adjusting himself and how he spoke with me. And yeah, it was very interesting. And it's powerful that, if you want something, practice it with that person.
Yeah, that sounds a great solution, and great way to engage people,
Yeah,
to first let them know that the way they are thinking, it's important. The way they are suffering, of course, certain things is also important, and you care about that. And just extracting information from them is something that is gonna make them feel engaged.
yeah,
And
yeah,
automatically they are going to be in a different mindset of giving in instead of just fighting back, no?
yeah, exactly. And, David, I didn't wake up one day with all this wonderful wisdom. Um, I think that when we do things in life, the things that we're passionate about come from solving our own pain. And,
Mhm.
along my journey, as a young leader, I was so focused on making a difference that there was a time that, let me just say this. My wife and I have been married for about 23 years,
Mhm.
and our relationship has never been stronger. But there was a time about 12, 13 years ago, that she almost left me. We almost got divorced.
Mm.
And it was because I was so involved with work and so consumed with work, and I would come home drained and exhausted with nothing left to give. And I think that that's a real struggle that a lot of people deal with, that they go into work, they give all their energy, they get burnt out, they get exhausted, they come home and they have nothing to pour into their families, and that causes disconnection. And I didn't know that. I wasn't aware of this happening until my wife came to me and she said, I'm leaving. And it was like driving my car into a brick wall. I knew at that moment that I had to make some changes to, because our marriage and she was important to me, and my kids were young at the time, and I realized that I wasn't being a good father, I wasn't being a good husband, I wasn't being a good partner, and that those things I do hold value to, but I needed to shift my energy and focus. So I made some changes in my life, and I love my children. We have a great relationship today, and my wife and I we're doing well. And but it took years to rebuild that,
Mm.
and and that's it. It's easy to not engage, but when you have something that's important to you, you engage with it, and that's an exchange of energy, right? It's not one way.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's I do what I do because I've felt pain, and and then there's this ripple effect when you're in an environment at work. Some people call it toxic, where the leadership's not engaged, and you get drained, and you feel like there's no meaning or purpose in your life, and you're just exhausted every day. That
Mm.
ripple flows to your family. It flows out into the community, and it causes, I think that it's a huge contributor to our mental health crisis that's happening around the world. This isn't a United States thing, this is everywhere. And when, to think about leadership being a privilege, but also a burden and a responsibility,
Mhm.
that leaders really do have, and when we think about heart-centered leadership, often it's been looked at as a soft skill or weak, but it's really has the power and strength to transform a mental health crisis, to leave people better. So that, if you were my employee, my priority would be that your family, the people in your life that love you, get a better version of you.
Mm.
And when we do that, then you show up as your best self because you feel cared for, you feel appreciated, you feel like you're actually part of the solution, not just being told to drive the solution. That we're engaged with each other, and then you show up as your best self. And there's tons of science and data that show that stress causes our brain to function at a lower level, and we make poor decisions, whether that's at home or on the job. And when that stress is that's pressure, now there is a level of stress that is positive, that helps us create things. But when the stress is so heavy, our brain doesn't work very well. And when we can, as leaders, create an environment to minimize some of that stress, or to reduce some of that stress, then our team naturally starts to function at a higher level, and then you have higher performing teams.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing your personal story. And I think
absolutely.
it's really really important that we also touch on that point, because I think that's the problem, the root cause of many productivity issues, and also of many situations where people decide to leave their job before they leave their marriage, or sometimes it's the opposite. The marriage is not uh, not a part of the solution, because it's too late. No,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
just didn't reflect on time, and now it's almost impossible to rebuild. And as you mentioned, it takes years, and that's also something that many people don't realize, that things can sound simple, and in paper they can look simple, but in reality it takes time, practice, and compromise to release the way you are, no? Because whether you like it or not, you need to change in order to for things to change. If we keep doing the same things, that's what Einstein used to say, we will keep getting the same results. No,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we need to look at our lives in a complete way, in a holistic way that is also implemented into leadership. And I agree that many times the energy that we arrive to our home is so low that you are the worst version of yourself with your family, and they have to cope with that. No.
Yeah. Yeah. And it does the human connection is so powerful, that it's a social connection, right? People being connected. I look at it in many different ways. And I'm constantly looking at metaphors or analogies, and it's like if you were to go to the store and buy sheets for your bed sheets, and you're looking at different sheets. There's a way that people look at quality when it comes to sheets, and that's a thread count, right? If you buy a sheet that is made with a 400 thread count or a 700 thread count or a 1200 thread count, the 1200 thread count, it costs more, right? There's more of an investment, which takes work, and it's a higher quality, and it will last longer. So often we'll get a 400 count sheet because it's inexpensive, but it wears out quicker, and then we have to reinvest. And so when we think about our business or our marriage or our being a father or a mother, investment in that, in investing the amount of energy in that to get a higher thread count. And so I use that analogy because when we look at our employees, if you have an individual contributor working in your warehouse or in production, and they don't know any of the leaders, they feel like they're just a cog in the wheel, right? They feel like they're just part of the machine. But if different leaders at different points meet that individual and get to know them, they're creating moments of connection. They're building a web. They're building higher thread counts, right? Like in the sheets. Mm-hmm. And then they're building something that's quality and building something that's sustainable for the long term. And people become engaged because they're seen as humans. And then you have a higher quality business and higher productivity, higher all things in your business start to get better because of the strength of that bond, that web of connection, human connection.
I remember one company, only one after all the journey that I have had, that that really made me feel welcome since day one, and I felt that connection with the leaders, with who I was. Uh, the the director of that company used to be a very warm-hearted woman that care about your story, also what you did, what were your passions, because I'm always loved to compete at an amateur level in swimming,
Mm.
and I always loved to do exercise. So she asked me about my competitions. She asked me about how was my day in the gym, or what did I do. So all those little things that she did made me feel that she cared for me, in addition to being just a new employee. And that made me feel so part of this organization, and the environment that was created in that team was so good that we still have a relationship as friends after almost 20 years of being in that company. We still are friends. We still see each other at least once a year. We try to reunite. And the people also, when we travel, because there were a lot of meetings outside from Mexico, in Brazil, or in other parts of South America, that people was completely amazing for me because they were like a family. They give me a hug like if I were their own brother or sister or whatever, and I felt that connection with them, and all of those meetings were so good, and we were looking forward to those things that we didn't even care about the job. We didn't care about the quantity of the job that we had or the things that we had to do because we were functioning as a family and not as a disconnected unity. No.
That's wonderful. Yeah, there's a gentleman, Daniel Coyle, who wrote a book called the Culture Code,
Mm.
and I don't know if you're familiar with the Culture Code,
I have
but
listened. I have listened to.
listen to the audio version. Yeah,
Yeah.
he assesses all different teams across many different sectors and organizations, from government facilities to healthcare to the educational system, blue collar, white collar, gray collar, sports teams. He looks at all of these high performing teams to see why they're high performing,
Mm.
and the one common denominator with all of these high performing teams is that the teams have a sense of belonging,
Mm.
human connection. And then he goes into, what does that mean, a sense of belonging? And there are three very, very distinctive belonging cues that happen on high functioning teams. And the first one is energy. So when you talk about this supervisor that you had that you now stay in touch with, uh, her energy when she sees you is she's fully engaged with you, right? So often, we'll go into our boss's office and they'll be sending an email on their phone while you're talking to them.
Mm.
That's not being engaged with your energy. So if I was sending an email and you walked in, I would just put my phone down and go, "Hi, David, how are you?" And I'm engaged with you, my energy level, right? The second belonging cue is individualism, that I see David as a father. I see him as somebody who loves swimming and competing. I see somebody who his health and physical ability is important and that he actually puts time and energy into that. And I see you as that person first before I see you in the role that you're in the organization. So that's individualism. That's the second belonging cue. The third belonging cue is that when we're finished with our interaction, I leave you with a sense that we're going to see each other again. That's called future orientation. If I came
Mm.
to your office and I just said, "Hey, David, what were the statistics last week on our productivity?" And you gave me the information and I said, "Okay," and I left. "Okay, okay, thanks," and I left. There's no sense of future engagement there. But if we talked about those statistics, and what that means today and what that means for tomorrow, how do we improve? How do we get better? And then we set up a time that we're going to revisit it, then our relationship is going to continue. And on a personal level, that is, have a great weekend. I'll see you Monday. Or I can't wait to see you at the holiday party next week. Or, all of these things, like leaving the other person with, we will meet again. Those three factors create belonging cues, and that's the common denominator with high functioning teams all across the world in different sectors and different organizations. It's a great book. It's a great book.
Yeah, I was also reflecting about some things that I just noticed from my students and the way that we could talk about this in this session today, because there was an exercise that they did about identity. So
Mm.
they have to describe more or less who they are, and what were the important things in their lives. And just by reading their homework or their activities, I almost cried with many of the stories, and they just left
Oh,
some pieces of information because they had a struggle in their lives, even though they are very young. And for me, it was so good to see that they did the effort, that they open up, and they practically told me their lives in small pieces, that I, when I wrote the feedback of the homework, I wrote them that I acknowledge the way they open up in their identity, in the way they are now, and the way that identity wants to lead their career, because that was also part of the exercise, that they reflect who they are and what can they do different when they go into the workplace and they implement their careers. And I think that's extremely important to notice people in a deeper level, that you can uh, simply leave them with that energy, that you are part of the same group, that you care about their story, that you will understand if they have a problem, and that you also will have a support with them. So that changes the perspective, and I see that in my classes many times, because usually when I enter into this school, they told me that students didn't connect to the classes because they don't have time and they are working and those things. And I used to, well, they prognosticate to me that I was going to have one or two students connected in my classes. So my first class I had 20, my second class I had 36. So what I told them is, this is what I love to do, teaching. But I love to teach to people that care. I love to teach to people that really want to learn and not just be here to obtain a degree. So demonstrate that into your homework, into your activities, and I will give you anything you want. Anything you want me to talk about, we can do it. I can go out of the program and talk about other things, but just engage with me in a way that you demonstrate that you really want to learn. And that changed the mindset of them. And now I see the direction, you know?
yeah, that's really wonderful. You said so many beautiful things there. And it made me think of I had a recent guest on my podcast, Dr. Jonathan Fisher,
Mm.
and I asked him, what's one piece of advice that you could give somebody to help with their, dealing with life and pressure and, stepping into a better place. And we talked about, a lot around that topic, but he said there's one thing that's universal. He calls it the ABCs.
Mm.
A, accept what's going on around you, in the sense that you can't, life is hard. Like, we just have to accept it. We talked a little bit ago that we can't make people do stuff. We can't change other people. We can only change the way we, think, the way we feel in our own actions. But we can't change others. We can change our own actions, and then collectively that influences other people, and then it attracts, right, this human connection. But he said that the A is just to accept the way the world is, and then B, find balance for yourself. Find what is it that you want to be different. What are some things that you would like to integrate into your life that would make your life more balanced? And then C is to cultivate that, right? So he says to me, if you want gratitude in your life, cultivate it. Practice gratitude, Get a journal and write down one thing every day that you're grateful for. It could be something simple, like I'm grateful for this cup of herbal tea. It's
Mhm.
beautifully tasting. I'm grateful that you and I are having this conversation right now. Right. So A, accepts reality. B, find balance. And C, cultivate the things that you want in your life. And slowly over time, you'll see a change. You'll see a shift.
That sounds a really great advice, because that's also releasing control in terms of just uh, being being yourself, recognizing that you have unique abilities or skills or things in your personality that will show up in a different way, in the way you implement your work or in the way you develop your work. And practice is, I think, the mother of leadership, let's say,
Yeah.
because any person that practices and practices and practices anything, they can scale in the direction that they want. I saw a movie 2 days ago or during the weekend, and it was about a guy that didn't have a leg, and he's a fighter, a wrestling fighter, Greco-Roman. I think it's the name, Greco-Roman
Mm-hmm.
wrestling, and he was always earlier than any of his teammates, and he didn't give up in many of the tasks that were very challenging in terms of having just one leg and climbing a mountain with uh, or
Mm-hmm.
crutches. I think it's
Crutches. Yeah. Yes.
crutches. I forgot the word. And he climbed the mountain with his crutches, and
Wow.
he fell like twice or three times, but he finally climbed all the way to the hill. And and I remember many times when I swam, and in the competitions there was a person without legs that he used to swim all of the competitions that I went. And when I saw him, I always felt such an inspiration to keep on doing the things, to keep
Yeah.
on repeating my effort, and remembering that image of those kind of people that demonstrate courage. I think it's also leadership without knowing it,
Yeah.
without knowing
Yeah.
it, because when we see someone that has some, let's say, disadvantage, because it's not a disability or whatever it is, the term, I think it's just a kind of a disadvantage. They show us many times that we don't have anything to complain, but we have plenty of things to be grateful for.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, it's so beautiful. It was a wonderful reflection. And at the beginning, you said, we were talking about the ABCs. You said that allows somebody to release control.
Hmm.
And I think you said release control or let go of control. That is such a powerful um, step, first step. Because here's the reality, David, that I look at if this coffee cup was my life, and where I only have so much energy in it, if I'm holding on to all the stuff that I can't control, I don't have the energy to focus on things that I want in my life. And we have to let go of those things and take those things out of our cup, out of our life, so that we have room in here to fill it back up with the things that we want. And, like forgiveness, right? When we have these things that happen in our life with other people, we hold on to them for years, sometimes lifetimes, and they prevent us from moving forward. And forgiveness isn't about the other person, it's about you, right? And when I can let go, I say to myself, I'm no longer going to hold the burden of this individual, and it doesn't belong to me. Their actions do not belong to me, and I'm going to let go of them. Now I feel lighter. I feel like I have space and room in my life to step into the things that I want to love and cultivate. It's a wonderful, powerful tool to be able to let go of things that are out of
Mhm.
our control.
Yeah. Yes, it's a tough lesson, but we have to learn to do that, because otherwise, as you mentioned, we just hurt ourselves, and in the way we hurt new people, or the people that are not even have done anything to us, and we really intoxicate our lives. It's our own poison when we don't
Mm,
forgive, when we
yeah,
don't acknowledge that we are human beings and we can make mistakes. All of us have
that's right.
done many mistakes, and that's another lesson that I learned also the hard way. Humility, the way to
Mm,
recognize that you really are not right many times, no?
yeah,
And that's also something that is missing in some leaders. They
yeah,
It's hard to recognize for them that they made a mistake, or they are not doing the things in the way that can work better for them and for the organization, no?
yeah. It's and back that takes us back to the beginning of this conversation that leaders are people too. You
Hmm.
know, we take leaders and we put them on this pedestal. We put them on the mantle above the fireplace, and we honor them as an object. But they're human, just like us. They're people too, and they need to be able to release. And there's lots of personal inner work that leaders have to do so that they can, uh, you know, be connected with their hearts, find that coherence between the mind and the heart, and then pour into their team, pour into their people.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
So, how can we wrap up this message for the leaders and for the organizations that need to start shifting their energy into what matters and not wasting energy into controlling things? No?
First, I think it's important to know, if I'm talking directly to leaders, that your people want to work. They want to be engaged, but they also, that means that they want to be part of the conversation. They want to be part of the process. Um, you know, we have a leadership style that worked for many years. Some people refer to it as command and control, where the leader feels like they always have to make the decisions.
Mhm.
We have lots of smart people in our organization and part of our team. And if you don't think they're smart, and if you don't think they have add value, I'm not sure why you hired them. But if you hired them because you saw something in them, help them bring that out. So one thing that a leader can do is, you know, leadership is often about navigating problems, whether it's market conditions or customer issues or productivity issues. Leaders are constantly making decisions to navigate problems. So, and look, that leader may know exactly how to navigate that problem, or they wouldn't be in the role that they're in. But if you want to create a better environment that is going to take your team and make them more high performing and lift them up, instead of solving the problem, present the problem to your team and ask them what their thoughts are on how we should make it better. And you'll start to see people become so engaged, and
Mm.
that's the goal. People want to be part of the solution. And look, some of them might know exactly what to do, and some of them might not. And leadership is like being a parent. You know,
Mm.
when my child is young, it's like having a junior employee, right? I've got to train and develop that employee to have knowledge and experience and give them time so that they can become better leaders. The same thing with children. When your children are young, you teach them, guide them, instruct them. But as they become older, you have to ask yourself a question. Have I empowered or my child? Have I given them the skills to not need me? Because one day they're going to become of age and they're going to go off into this world and I'm not going to be there to protect them or tell them what to do. Have I given them this, help them develop those skills to survive and thrive out in the world without me? And so as leaders, it's our job to look at our employees the same way. Have I given them the skills to solve problems without me? And then,
Yeah.
and when I can do that, then I don't have to own all the stress and I don't have to own all the problems. And I don't have to take that home to my husband, wife, children. And my life becomes better as a
Mhm.
leader. Yeah.
Yeah.
So engage your people in the true sense of its definition. Connect with them, meaningful connection, engage with them, uh, work with them, not tell them how to work,
Mhm.
right? Engage with them like gears so that when you move, they move. Be involved with them. Yeah.
Thank you, Jason, for closing up like that and with that message, because I think that we really need a shift into many directions of many organizations in terms of this engagement, in terms of this collaboration of with one another, and
Yeah.
thinking that we are part of the same system, as you mentioned in part of the conversation, that we are like a body. We need to see organizations as that, as little small organs and then cells that need to work in cohesion, in congruence, and integrated into a system that gives you the best that you can have. And that's the way the body works. And
Yeah. And, you know, I love that finishing on this topic. The heart is the leader of our body.
mhm,
It pumps life to every organism in our body, every other system in our body. It's the first organ that develops in the fetus before the brain,
mhm.
and in our heart, metaphorically, is where our feelings are at. And so we need to nurture that, understand that, and lead with our heart.
Thank you. Yes, and it is indeed the first organ that develops and that beats, that it's alive already, and that notices everything before any other
Yeah,
organ or
yeah,
cell.
yeah.
So thank you, Jason. Thank you for this conversation. I really enjoyed our reflection of many topics, and thanks.
Likewise, David. Thank you for having me as your guest, and you're doing wonderful things in the world, my friend.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you. Where can people find you?
Oh, geez, I spend most of my time on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And so if you'll add that a link to my LinkedIn, um, yeah, I'm a heart centered leader. So yeah, I'd love to connect. My podcast, Lead with Your Heart podcast, is on YouTube and Spotify or Apple or wherever you find your podcasts.
Perfect.
That's where I show up the most.
Perfect. I'll link that to the description of this video. And
Thank you.
thank you everyone for listening and ask questions. I always encourage that. Interact with us, engage with us, and let us know what can we help you with in terms of this topic. Thank you, and see you on the next one. Bye.